Tonight we are talking about Pantheon's return to the PVE MMORPG away from the extraction testing mode and what that means for players and Pantheon's future. We wanted to first address some commonly asked questions, the stuff that we picked up on the forums and on Discord and Reddit, and hit on those topics tonight. Let's see. So the extraction mode had specific goals to increase engagement with little content, to gather critical data, and to potentially add funding to accelerate development. How does the switch back to the MMO affect these goals? Let's address all of these things separately. So first up in the Q&A, how do we plan on accelerating funding with the MMO game?
So, first of all, hello everybody. It's good to be back with you and chatting again. Major development for sure, and I'm been just as excited to chat with you all about it and kind of talk through it as I know you have been as well. So, um, yeah, first of all, we're considering different options here when it comes to accelerated uh, development through additional funding. We are considering different options. The testing mode that we had just kind of put out there for a bit was one of those options that we were considering, depending on how things shook out. But it wasn't the only thing that we're considering, and one of those things that we're looking at now. And these are all just potentials. Just like we'd said before, no final decision has been made. This kind of thing that we need to do very carefully and thoughtfully. Um, but we're looking at, for example, potentially like an early access subscription type situation with Pantheon once we're a little further along, um, as just one potential. And I know a lot of you have put out some really good ideas as well over the last weeks and couple months, that are all kind of part of the consideration and the calculus of all this. So again, I just want to reiterate, at the end of the day, the goal is to complete Pantheon, and whatever means we can find to accelerate that process is what we're focused on. We also have very supportive investors, that we have uh, found along the way that have just been amazing and share the vision of what we're doing, and are very committed and supportive. And I think it's also very important to say too that we are not out of money. Um, I'm just going to say it as bluntly as I can. I know that there are a lot of concerns with a lot of our messaging, in that the interpretation of it was we're out of money. This is all, uh, kind of a last ditch effort to try to make something happen. That is not the case. Um, what we meant to emphasize, and what I want to emphasize again, that our goal is to accelerate development as much as we can, so that we can finish the game sooner. So I want to make sure that everyone leaves here tonight being able to shed that concern that this is all gonna come to an end because we're out of money. That is absolutely not true.
Yeah, we're gonna hang on. I think that you talked about this before, but a lot of us would probably just stay to make the game for the heck of it. Okay, how do we plan to increase engagement with limited content now that we are back to the MMORPG?
Well, so this is one where, again, I don't know that we did a great job in hindsight explaining this as clearly as we could have. That one of the main reasons behind the testing mode that we put forward was specifically to create a session based format that had natural kind of disruption points in the flow of progression, until, like I said last time, I think in the last Q&A, MMOs are a very long play that require a lot of content. You run out of things to do and you want to find another area and move to another place, or dig deeper into your class's development or try out different combinations of itemization and um, uh, there's secondary systems like crafting and gathering and lots of various things ultimately to get your hands on, and we're making progress on all those fronts, but the goal was to have a more compact loop. And now that we're moving away from that, we are needing to put some thought into how do we get the same amount of good feedback and impression points that we were able to get with the testing mode that we did. And I do think that there are ways, and it wasn't that there weren't ways previously either. It's just that we need to do things a little bit differently, and it requires us to kind of change our trajectory a little bit. And so I want to talk about that for a second. Um, what our plan is in kind of leaning fully back into just developing the MMORPG fully and purely is one number one, focus testing. So be prepared for there to be more inflection points of us coming in directly and saying, okay, everybody who is in this level range, we need you on this day during this time if you're available and willing and interested to come to this area and do this thing and do this thing in this many ways or for this long. We will be doing some more of that focus testing and probably recruiting some strike teams within our testing group to focus on specific things. For example, we just had kind of an impromptu raid last night on one of the higher level NPCs that's currently accessible. And it was fantastic. I mean, it showed us a lot of things about some of the minutia points of combat and everything from like stacking rules to some things that it illuminated about threat and uh, a couple of little bugs and some of that were just really invaluable to see, and that you only see that when you have a bunch of players coming together fighting something 5-10 levels higher than them, and how all that ends up playing out. So focus testing is going to be a big part of it. The other thing we're going to do in a little bit kind of, I guess, more of a true trying a new thing is our zones are very, very large. And as we do more streams coming up shortly, and the more we kind of show off how big these areas are, they're just very large, and there's a lot of content and a lot of places within them to build out. And one of our plans is, as we move into new zones, as we get started, we're about to kick up on AVP and getting AVP Avenger's Pass online again here pretty soon. We're going to get Halnir Cave online again here pretty soon. Once those zones are in and we start looking to Silent Plains, to Eastern Plains, to Black Rose Keep, those areas, we're going to be moving in smaller content points and making those accessible. So what you would imagine is, when that time comes, let's say we're starting on Silent Plains, there's several different POIs inside of Silent Plains. There's Old Dimmoth, there's the Grandfather Thorn, there's Sky Durban, there's several other areas I'm not going to spoil. But instead of us like developing the whole zone and everybody waiting for like the whole zone to be finished, we're going to have kind of a baseline of the zone in, meaning like the terrain texture, things like that. But then we're going to have these individual points of content coming online in a way for players to, at first, fast travel to those locations. What that means is you might find yourself inside of kind of like an invisible wall area where you can't actually leave, but you'll be able to look out and see, Silent Plains around you, or at least the beginnings of Silent Plains. But Old Durban will be accessible, and you can do that content. You can experience, what there is to experience there. And then, a week later, you're going to, head back to Old Durban, and you're going to see, oh, wow, the deicide thorns are in. Oh, wow, they've got the grass, in place now. And some of the flora is starting to come online. And then we'll bring up, the area underneath the Grandfather Thorn, and we'll bring in Sky Durban, and we'll bring in these areas and allow players to travel to them. And then once we get to a certain point with the zone's development, then we'll open up those content points, and then you'll be able to move around the zone as a whole. But this way, you'll actually be able to see the zone developing instead of waiting and just waiting for like pictures or videos or whatever. Testers will actually be able to get into the zone and engage with the different parts of it as it's being built out as a whole.
That's awesome. A lot of people just got very happy. So is this going to get us the data that we need?
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be different, and we're going to, um, there's here's the deal. The testing mode was uh, is a path data wise, testing wise, that for that purpose would have could have been effective. Uh, However, to be effective, it needs people playing. And while there were some that were really enjoying it for what it was, understanding that it was, not what Pantheon was becoming, it was not, a replacement for the MMO. It was just, kind of a mode that was framed around replayability and all that stuff. Um, the reality is we didn't have enough people playing it, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but we had to really examine what those reasons were. And a lot of it was because of the concerns and the frustrations, the things that are, again, very understandable, in terms of how things were communicated and how many question marks there were, and there's just a lot of it was just a lot of unfortunate things, because underneath it all, the goal is what I've stated, which is we want to make sure that Pantheon is moving forward, and we're trying to come up with a path forward that is the most streamlined for us as it can be, developmentally. This new, I shouldn't say new, I guess, but moving away from that and back into just really looking at the development of the MMO, looking at our team size, all the things that we've said, already. I do believe that this will end up being a superior approach. Um, I really believe that it will. I think it's going to take us a little bit longer to get spooled up developmentally, where we're hitting the kind of clip that we want to hit, um, in kind of this new approach. But I think in a relatively short order, I do feel very confident that it will be superior.
Yeah, and I think our testers are going to be a lot more into it, which is super important. So, when will the MMORPG be back?
It comes back online this Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific.
Yep, it's going to be a quick flip. The server's going offline Friday night, coming back up Saturday morning.
Just to expand
So,
on that, just so you know, the extraction testing mode servers, like Jamie said, are coming down tomorrow or Friday night. But that's at 10 p.m. Pacific. So if you still want to try it out or get something done before they come down, it's 10 p.m. Pacific.
yeah.
Last chance.
Can you tell us what the specific changes that are happening for the switchback?
Yeah. So, um, some of the most important kind of points would be we're moving back to the MMO rule set. And so, to break down that rule set, um, the death penalty will now be the standard Pantheon death penalty. What that means is when you die, you will respawn at your spawn point, which is one of the bind stones. Well, your innate spawn point is your class-based spawn point when you first create a character, but then there are a couple of bind stones in the zone that you can bind yourself to, where you'll respawn after death. When you respawn, you will have all of your worn equipment that you actually have equipped will be on your character. All of your general inventory, your coin, will be on your corpse. Um, you will There's no time limit anymore, so this is not a session based thing anymore. This is a traditional MMO kind of rule set there, so it's not timed. There's no timers. There's just logging in and playing however long you want to play, and logging off when you're ready to log off. Um, you will well, going back to the death penalty, we're going to be bringing the resurrection spells back, so classes that are able to resurrect will be able to do so. um, the near death state is going to be coming back as well. It's just going to be much more intense, hopefully, in terms of how long you have to get help before you bleed out. um, but we do like the strategic component of near death to be able to have a little window to reposition yourself, uh, and make it slightly easier for your group to hopefully bring you back into the fray. But we are definitely going to be tightening and constraining that window quite a bit and making it much more difficult to pull that off. Um, so we're going back to a group size of 6. So we will have a max group size of 6. Groups also can be formed at any time, anywhere. We do have all of the new social elements that we created over the last couple of months, with the social window with your friends list, the ability to tell who's looking for group, uh, and improved who functionality will be fully in place. You're not going to be able to loot other player corpses anymore, only your own. You'll be able to uh, no longer engage in PvP, uh, given that Pantheon is obviously a PVE centric game. So PvP will be sliding back uh, to its secondary place of consideration for a little while. Um, uh, a word about the tower. So we do plan to utilize the tower at some point, when I was referring to the fast travel stuff earlier. So the extraction portals that we have placed in the zone, some of them will be being removed. Some of them will stay. They will stay in places that we intend for the wizard gateways and the druid wandering stone locations to be. Um, and those that stay will be kind of an always on gateway right now, where if you travel to them and step onto them, it will take you to the tower. And the tower will have the portal that we're going to use for the fast traveling that I talked about earlier. So when you want to go to lots of specific content locations that are opening up as we develop out these parts of these zones, you'll have a way to do that in the tower. And then, of course, the goal obviously being as soon as possible that you would have a way on foot to those places. And most likely, once there is an on foot path to those places, we'll be removing those locations from the portal selection. It's really just meant as a stopgap for now to make those areas accessible until the zone as a whole supports it. But that being said, the crafting stations, the bank, the class trainers, all of those now are back in Throne Fast in Avelia, where you're used to them being. The one kind of thing to I guess explain a little more clearly here is what we're doing with the 11. So the 11 originally with the testing mode were kind of the hub based NPCs that all of the quests uh, kind of flowed through. And so instead of it allowed us to create and front load lots of different quests for players to get and to go and do, and they know exactly where to get the quests from and exactly where to turn them back into. And what we found over the years in our PA tests is that we would have lots and lots of different quests in the zone, but they were often being overlooked or just not really interacted with because they weren't deemed as worth the time or the effort. And that may be the case long term. In MMOs, it's not like every single quest is a quest that you want to do or necessarily feel compelled to do. But given that we're in testing, we want players to be doing these quests as much as possible. And so our goal was to create that somewhat of a linear progression of quests, where we were able to test the tiered merchant functionality, which is, as you gain reputation with these merchants, you're going to slowly unlock more of their inventory that you can select from. So we want that mechanic being tested and balanced out. But it also provides a very simple, clear path for tasks or quests, where you know who you're getting quests from, and for the most part, where you're turning them in. And we're going to keep that in place for now. The goal is to transpose that into in-world NPCs and actually have that, you know, expected matrix of quests that are scattered all throughout the zones and have, different unique NPCs that are giving them to you and all of that. That's absolutely the plan. But for now, to expedite that part of the testing loop and to make sure that the mechanics and the locales and the quest kind of function and mechanics that we want to be tested are being tested by the most players possible, then it's just a very nice, effective way to do that. But the 11 also have been moved into Avalia. They are in world. They're in their own various parts of Avalia that kind of represent where they would be based on their character a little bit. Um, but yeah, it's a good way for us to keep that quest testing and all that flowing nicely. Um, and I guess the last thing to say, and maybe it's already clear, but this is doing away from with any of the instancing as well. So this is back to uh, everybody existing in the same space at the same time.
And just when I learned how to jump between instances. So is the extraction mode gone for good?
Maybe maybe uh, w- you know there is. I believe it's a potentially compelling um, path for a PvP experience. And I am sure there are some streams out there from many years ago where I've said something to this effect that when you have such an intensely deep PvE game with the scale and scope of the world, of the denizens of the world, the faction system, the player progression, the traversal mechanics, the players, the class synergies, the challenge of the PVE content. That that setting, I believe, is a very compelling setting for a more open world approach to PvP. That's not gamified in battleground type modes. And I think survival extraction is a very compelling environment and medium to take kind of that open world PvP that many of us who like PvP have loved in the past. When we've experienced that in games where it was kind of Wild West, and the the survival extraction medium I think is really compelling for that, especially if it's open world, meaning survival extraction without timers, um, but where you're making the decision how long you go and when you need to back out and reset and things like that. So again, maybe I think when I envision Pantheon down the road and its PvP offerings, I really kind of cringe at like battlegrounds or arenas or things like that. It just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the game as well. Not to say that there can't be arenas in the world where players can consent to PvP with each other or go in there if they want to do that kind of stuff. But I mean more like gamified arenas with like ladder, like player ranks and things like that. I'm looking for something much more grounded and raw, that sits right alongside the game really well. Now, whether that's something that is like a server rule set. Maybe we have some servers that are more traditional PvP rule set with just it turned on, and there being like a level range that you can engage other players with in PvP. We'll probably do that, and then this may also be an additional server rule set, or it could be an actual a mode of play that you can access from inside the game. Um, both are pretty compelling options.
Yeah, that was one of the things that we got out of this test was the ability to do those rule sets. And I personally really liked the PvP and the extraction. It kind of felt dangerous. So while we're returning to the MMORPG format, will it slow development and updates? And if so, how are we going to offset this?
No, it won't slow the updates. It won't slow the updates, but it will require some shifts in timing. It'll, some shifts in priority of tasks, just like we said when we were first talking about the extraction mode, that we were bringing certain things earlier in the timeline. They were still necessary for the game's development overall, but we were bringing them earlier than would have been necessary otherwise. In the same way, those things, some of those same things will get pushed back into their places and other things will be brought forward. To give you an example, for many of you would be good news. This is where classes, for example, become much higher priority to finish more quickly, and where you'll be seeing updates on those much more readily.
Yay. We'll get to that, Augie. Be patient. Um, what can the alpha pledges expect as far as PA access? We stated that they would have test sessions. Will they be monthly? What's the plan there?
Yeah, the schedule is still something we're determining. It's a lot of it's going to depend on how this first alpha pledge test goes in December. We we want to move quickly, especially in the new year, as quickly as we can, to extending and increasing that availability and the access that alphas have to test. But we're going to see how this first one goes, and then make a decision from there towards finalizing like an actual schedule that we can publish, and that way everyone will know when to expect it.
It's going to be so much fun. Will alpha testers be able to talk about their testing experience?
Yes, they will.
Will alpha players be on the same server as PA testers?
Yes, they will.
Is the NDA lift retroactive? Will testers be able to talk about previous test experiences?
Yes, it is retroactive, but screenshots, videos, things like that, all still that haven't been approved can't be shown. But talking about prior testing experience is absolutely okay.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun. You guys are gonna have so much fun on December 1st. So many things to share. Will the in-game content be able to support a larger population with the incoming alpha testers?
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting. I'm looking forward to it, to see just how well it holds up, not only performance wise, but also just content wise. Because with it being up 24/7, um, even with just the 24-hour access at first that the alpha pledgers are going to have, it's going to be really telling how well our zones hold up in terms of how well the player push actually works. We've done in preparation for this, we've done some tweaks to the layout of Throne Fast, and that will be largely the queue that we take in like Wild's End and Fairtail and the other starting zones. I feel confident. I also know that we're going to be bringing up additional servers. We're not going to just have the single server, because we're talking about you know this is getting us close to like 10,000 people that could potentially come in and play, and so we have to be very cognizant about that, and we're trying to be, with the amount of servers we have prepped. But at the end of the day, the zone is definitely going to be getting hammered. So it is kind of a let's wait and see how it goes. It's also why we're going to be working to get Avenger's Pass and Hunter Cave back up and available as quickly as we can, because as we do want to move to potentially more uptime and accessibility for alpha pledgers, then we need more game world for players to spread out in, as they naturally would. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
Very much, very much. So you got the paladin in pretty quickly, and Augie, this is for you. You want to tell us what's next for classes? When can we hope to see some more come in?
Yeah, so Warriors next. Warrior is either going to be online by this Saturday, which would be amazing, and my goal. If it's not in by this Saturday, it will be coming in very first patch after we do this transition, which, as you all know, won't be long. that cadence is going to stay the same. So yeah, warrior's next. Um, Once the warrior is in, or really the next step after that, we're going to be starting work on the pet system this week. And with the pet system is going to come the summoner class. It's going to come enchanter or charm. We're going to be able to build out, some of the aspects of the druid and the ranger as well. And then once the pet system is finished, we have a little bit of work left to shore up the ranged combat system. And at that point, we will be, full original roster in, and um, keep an eye out either later this year or early next year for some changes to the class race matrix as well. You can. I want to give such a strong hint here. I'm fighting it so
No,
hard.
no.
Oh my goodness.
So
We're gonna
let's
update. We're gonna update the matrix, guys. That's it. Okay.
let's do something that you can focus on the job. Zenton sort of asked, as a follow up to the warrior being added in the quick iteration, what state are the classes going in? Because I know that you said before in our last Q&A that and you asked everybody if they're all right with classes going in. It's just partially done. Are we still going that way, or can they expect fully completed classes when they do go in?
You can expect something very similar to the state the paladin came in at, and that is with enough of their ability arsenal for their role to be fulfilled, for them to feel unique as they're meant to feel as that class. And then the majority of what I'm thinking of when I say that is, there being a handful of specific abilities that we're not going to have in at present because maybe there's some like specific node work that needs to be done from Kyle, and was waiting on his availability to do that. Or it's just a mechanic that we don't have in place yet. A good example of that is the reckoning points for the paladin. So by Saturday, we'll have the reckoning points generating how they're meant to generate, at least in this first pass, and those will be working properly. But warrior, in that regard, the battle point system for the warrior is actually a lot more straightforward than the reckoning points, and so those will be functional for the warrior when the warrior comes in. So it's I would say comparable to the state of the paladin, and I would apply that same expectation to the other classes yet to come.
Yeah, we're getting them in, getting them done. Since I just saw it come up, what about the other races? Are we gonna see those in anytime soon?
You're going to see movement on the other races very soon. I actually just had a chat with Bronson, Chris Willis today, talking about those. We want to start with our largest and smallest race, so you can expect to see the ogre and the gnome first. That's going to give us, for all the reasons you would imagine, just helping us keep our scales consistent, making sure we're accounting for things. Now, that being said, ogres, they're going to have a tough time getting in certain places. We've always planned that to be the case. Those of you that have tested, you've seen a couple of areas in the Goblin Cave and certainly some places in Houndere Cave where there's places way too small to fit through normally. We do plan for shrink spells and other items that are going to allow you to get places you're not able to get to normally. Ogres, will have to bear that burden as they move around the world. But when we're looking at things like ladders, when we're looking at doorways and access points and various different things like that, it's helpful to have those things in mind, those two scales in mind. And we also were talking today about how we can really, in the new style, especially the freedom that gives us with some of the tweaks we've had to make to the character rig, we can now go back and look at that ogre and say, okay, we want to maintain this rig. We want this rig to be unified across our different character models, because that's just the smart, efficient thing to do. But that doesn't mean that we can't revisit the silhouette of this ogre and with some of our races and start kind of leaning back into some more of that monstrous kind of proportionally unique look and aesthetic and silhouette. So we're looking at how far we can take that, because obviously we want to, all of the armor models that we've made, we want to make sure that all those stay able to be used among the various races, but there's some nice improvements to the silhouette of some of these races that we're going to be able to make.
Sounds so gritty.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing the ogre. Will thirst and hunger still have dire consequences?
Hunger and thirst are still going to be in. They're not going to kill you if you run out of if your bar fully depletes. They're going to shut off your ability to regenerate health and mana if that becomes the case. And if they fully deplete, then your ability to regenerate health and mana, respectively, connected to hunger and thirst, and then also some attribute reduction as well.
Yeah, I feel like hunger and thirst led to a lot of bodies in the tower.
Yeah.
So one of the benefits of the extraction testing mode has been that testers had a little bit more direction, and I know that you've already talked a little bit about this. A little bit more direction from the dev team regarding how and what to test. Will that continue? We talked about that. We will have focus testing. What about combat logs and slash bug?
Yeah. So I don't have an ETA yet on that, but we're aware of the need for it to improve the precision of the combat log, to make the bug reporting tool and that process more better. So that is part of the overall calculus here. Also, the just to reiterate, the quest progression through the 11 is still designed to send players to specific areas to do certain things, and that's not only putting the quest mechanics and the wide variety of those that we have now for like objective criteria and accept criteria and things like that. And I forgot to say this too. It's not quests aren't only going to be coming through these 11 NPCs right now. There are some quests that will originate out in the world as we place, some of those here and there. There's also going to be a lot of quests that originate from items that you find and that you loot as well. That's going to be another big part of it, which is actually a really important part of just our game loop of being heavy on exploration and discovery, is those items and things that initiate quests as you find them out in the world, and those spawning dynamically in a lot of cases. But that quest progression piece is a big part of it. And then again, back to the focus testing, all those things in concert will get us there.
Yeah. So with this test mode, we were doing a little bit of the tasks. We're giving the majority of the XP. Is that going to continue, or are we changing the XP on the kills?
No, the XP for tasks has been already dramatically reduced,
Okay.
to be much more in line with what the goal is for Pantheon long term anyway, which is I don't want quests to be the primary progression path.
Hmm.
I want them to be important for. I want reputation with quest givers to be meaningful. There's so many really fun things that we're planning to do with that we already have support to do with that, or support for those things is already in place. That's based on gaining your reputation, building reputation with a particular faction type. And so that is going to become a primary impetus for quest completion. But then also, I mean, some experience is fine, some coin is fine, and item rewards are great, can be awesome incentives as well. Not to mention mastery shards and other things that are part of like quest completion incentives, and then the tiered merchant thing as well. So there could be, for example, a merchant or two in an area like Demeth or Avelia, or even like in Black Rose Keep, for example, that you can build up access to a specific merchant in Black Rose Keep. And as you figure out ways to continue to raise your Black Rose Keep faction, you're not going to be going in there and wrecking them anymore for the sake of not tanking your faction. But if that's a tiered merchant inside of Black Rose Keep, then you're going to be hungry to find out, okay, like if I keep raising my rep with this person, what are they going to offer? They're like tier 2 or tier 3 or tier 4 inventory, like getting some really insane stuff, but also be obviously very difficult to raise your faction to that point. So yeah, it's these are things that I'm super excited about seeing come into play a lot more in the testing environment, and then having our testers be able to talk about the experience too. It's really fun.
Kind of gives us the best of both worlds there, having those changes that we're bringing in from the gameplay mode.
Yeah, yeah.
So, is there a date-ish for AVP and the other zones?
Um, hmm, a date.
Month, quarter?
If it wasn't like Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up, I would not hesitate to say December. Um, and I say that, this is also something important to say as well. Moving forward, we're going to have to get a lot different of a mindset towards what we show and what we give access to. Um, we have to do it. It's a change that we have to make for the sake of our healthiness as a team, for the health of our community. Like, we have to do it. And what that means is we are going to do things like bring AVP online before it's fully buttoned up and has a bow on it. And that may mean that there's art in there pre-art conversion. So you're running around and you see Hangor, or you see Mad Run, or you see places that, like, oh, that that doesn't fit. You know what? Like, that's okay. You may see NPCs that are missing, or we don't have ogres. The ogres finished yet, so the area of AVP that some of you are aware of had some ogre NPCs, some like player character ogre NPCs. They may not be there for a little while. That's okay. Uh, our approach is going to start splitting up into, as much as possible, a two pass approach, which means we're going to be getting baselines in place, because we believe firmly that what we do have in Pantheon, even right now, is very compelling when it comes to the exploration, the group play, the class development, those things. And in and of themselves, even if there's not a fracture present, even if there's not a functional or climate present, even if there's not all kinds of really cool things to discover by climbing, or you can't actually swim yet, even though swimming is something that's coming a lot sooner than I thought it was going to be able to. Um, but even when it does fully come online, if there's not all this really cool stuff to see or find under the water, that's okay, because there's that second pass that's going to come through. So I'll give you a good example. Mad Run in Avenger's Pass, Mad Run has evolved a lot. The testers that have played in Avenger's Pass and have experienced Mad Run before probably remember it as there being a few spiders and a lot of werewolves. Um, I'm not going to spoil a lot of the lore, but Mad Run is meant to be a very hive-like spider, heavily spider themed area. And a lot of the changes that we've made to the layout of Mad Run, even to down to like the entrance of it and the external layout, is very different and meant now to reflect that kind of hive, um, a sense of being like a very malevolent hive. And first pass means we'll have the cave modules in place, we'll have the spiders in place, we might have some interesting visual effects, and some spider webs and things like that, but we may not have egg sacs, we may not have dripping ichor from the ceiling, we may not have webbed victims that are squirming, we may not have those all of those props and the accoutrements and the things like that first pass. That would be something we'd come back in and do second pass. But we're much more quickly going to be able to get these places roughed out, players in testing, making sure that they feel really good gameplay wise, even before we come back and spice them up.
I'm such a fan of this. Testers going to be testing. That's what's going to be happening. Will they be able to get some new concept art for the races before implementation?
Concept art of the new. Oh, yes, yeah. Where we are making large enough deviations for the races that we do, we will absolutely have to precede that with concept art, and that would be something we'd share.
Okay. A lot of it's going to be using the concept art that we already had though. Is that right?
where we can. But like I was saying before, in the races that we want to find more of a unique silhouette, uh, then there are some changes that we need to make. Like I can say for the ogre, for example, that it'll probably end up being much closer to the first iteration of the ogre that we had. For those of you that can remember back to that, um, more so than the second iteration. Uh, but we would definitely want to have new concept art to precede that, just to make sure that that was captured really clearly.
Okay. How often do you expect that you will be doing character wipes?
Well, one that we know for sure is, depending on whatever the alpha pledge cadence is, it's likely that we will do wipes somewhat connected to those. It doesn't mean that we'll do a wipe every single time alpha pledges come in, because we want to also make sure the current PA testers are able to get to those higher levels and experience those things. But we do want to have somewhat regular wipes. And again, a lot of this depends on how long we actually go with those single sessions as well. If we're looking to, make those more consistent, then our need to wipe will be much less based on just the pledges alone, and making sure they have people to play with, and things like that. So it's still TBD, but to some degree will be connected to the cadence of the alpha pledgers.
Okay. I've got one for you, Mr. Dean. If
Yay!
no, you're important too, darn it. If no visual NDA drop, how about letting some of the streamers get in and
Mm,
put together some pre-approved videos? Um,
how about that?
how about that? So, what are your thoughts?
So it's coincidental because we were just talking about this today. And I wish I could give you a definitive answer today, but I can't because we haven't decided. However, what I can tell you is we do want to do more. We do want the access to streaming to be a lot easier for all y'all. So we're trying to think of a decent way to do that, where you can. Here's what my thought is, and I just pitched this today. It's not. I'm not saying that we're doing it this way, but it's one of the thoughts. Um, just have some sort of form to fill out. Tell us what it is you want to stream, when you want to stream it, send it in for submission, and you either get a yes or no. I think that's probably going to be the easiest way to do it. We did do the streamer program where people were signing up. It was a little bit odd because it didn't take off the way that we thought it would, because what we found is that we would reach out to people during those sessions or prior to those sessions to say, hey, do you want to stream? And more often than not, they didn't see that message. So we ended up getting down to the wire, and we were reaching out to more streamers, and some people saw the message, some people didn't. So we just weren't able to get things together as quickly as we needed to. So I think something like this, submit your requests thing. I think that that might be easier to maintain. But we'll
Yeah.
figure it out. We'll figure it out. We do want to do more streams.
Yeah, it's definitely going to help being up 24/7 because hard to catch people when it's only one session a month, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Guess we have a little bit of time for a few more questions. Let's see. Um, will the food system get an auto eat drink as long as you have food and drink on you?
Um, Maybe.
That just seems lazy, guys. Come on.
I mean, it's a question that's so far from my mind, and so I don't want to give like a definite like absolutely, because I'm immediately thinking, well, what about the difference between common food that you're eating more just to satisfy hunger and thirst versus the mini meals and drinks that are more exotic, or things that actually have status effects? You don't want to be automatically chewing through those. You want to be able to eat those manually. So would we have a different designation for common food and drink versus those kinds of things? These are the things that, like, when I hesitate and then say maybe, I don't want to have to process through all that in real time and then put out something that feels like a strong decision without thinking through it more.
Yeah, that sounds like a creative director line of thought. Let's see. To help prevent zone being so full, I assume this is when we are maybe bringing in alphas, opening new servers. Why not instance? Use the instances from 247 to do a version of sharding for Throne Fest.
I was
I was
I'm
gonna.
so glad that you read that because I was going to edit that out. But I'm like, I wonder.
I've already been down that road, Jamie. I thought I had took that bullet for everybody, but I guess we can.
Nope. It was there. It was there, and I read it.
Okay.
Dang you, Ben Dean.
uh, I didn't ask the question, but I did not take that out.
All right. All right. Yeah. The beauty of it is we could. That's something we could do now that we've gone through the testing mode process. We could do that. So if we find that with alphas in, especially as they are in more regularly, as that becomes a thing, then we may very well need to set up more of a what was the alternative term? I always forget it. The
Instancing,
the
sharding,
layering, I think, is like it's not
sharded.
it's not phasing. Phasing is like the in-game uh, kind of instancing where the environment for you changes compared to the environment for those around you. But when we're talking about like and that's part of what the solution could be. Phasing is actually we have support for phasing. We could do phasing right now, but we don't have it actually implemented in a working example yet. Um, but if we're talking like layering of zones where thrown fast becomes too full based on what player cap we set, and so it becomes thrown fast one and thrown fast two spools up, and all new players coming in would be in thrown fast two. That is something we could also set up and do if the need for it arises based on our architecture right now.
Are all the zones and areas that we're planning right now, are they going to finish out one continent before we get started on another?
Yeah, sorry, I was just reading Kyle's response, and I want to say it out loud just for those who are listening to this.
Hmm.
I stand corrected. We do actually have, or we're using an example of phasing um, in the way we had set up the tower. So just want to make that correction. Um, are we going to finish? Yes, we will be. We will be looking to finish King's Reach first before we move to one of the other two.
Until we get the bug reporting tool up and running, how do we intend to collect bug information from alpha testers who do not have access to the NDA restricted areas? Or are we going to open up that information to everyone?
We'll be using sharding for that, right?
Hmm.
I sharded. Um,
Nice.
It's going to be public information anyway, so I'll answer this directly. I don't think we decided on that yet, but I don't see why we would need to put bug reporting behind a an access gate if the NDA is dropped anyway. So
yeah, I mean, right now, bug reporting happens what on our forums and on Discord. Um, I guess we haven't talked about it, but possible that we could just open that up.
I'm guessing that's probable at this point.
Yeah, that'll be fun to moderate.
Have fun. Just drop that bomb on you. I'm going to bed.
Along those same lines, will Alpha Pledgers have access to VIP Discord channels and our super secret channels that we have up top?
I think
We
that's a
have,
question for you, Jamie.
I guess we haven't talked about that either. You know what? I'm gonna have to take that up with the VIPers. Do they want to let people in and share the wealth? We'll have to talk about it, huh? I'm not
Sounds
opposed to it, that's for sure. Oh my goodness, is that most of our questions?
yeah. I just threw one more in there.
How do you avoid the game being spoiled before launch if content is completed as it's made. That's the sucky part of testing, right?
Like, I think that's asking if it's tested as it's made, if it's made
Yeah.
available to play. And the answer is we won't be making everything available to play as it's made. We will by necessity to keep the game exciting for when it actually does launch. We will be intentionally holding those things back. And a lot of the reasons why our zones are designed the way that they are too is that we have lots of natural play space that we can open up over time that are relatively well hidden from the normal, observer of a player in a zone. But even if you go exploring to the fullest and check every nook and cranny, there's lots of places that we are intentionally not building out or populating out because we want to have room to expand even these zones out over time and add fresh things, uh, without having to do these major huge expansion drops, but we can have much smaller form expansion that way over time as well. So either through that, and then also just not putting everything in your hands, especially as we get a little further down the road and we're working with a much larger world size where there's plenty of room and things to do, then the need to get more and more things as quickly as possible into the tester's hands starts to go down.
Yeah. Sarah, I got you, girl. Did the art change speed up the development process?
Oh yeah,
Really did.
we need some kind of a write up or a stream or a part of one of these where maybe maybe CW can come in and talk a little bit about that.
Let's just bring him on stage. CW, come on down. No, I'm just
We should sometime. He's fun to talk to.
we did that to him last time, and he was a great sport about it. But yeah, see him in the channel. What? Sorry, man. Didn't mean to give you a heart attack.
Oh, Spoff, by the way, you're banned. I'm banning you. You can't. You're not allowed back in. All right. So have we considered smaller monthly pledges that could be held to at least a year? Like 20 a month for just alpha? Or a monthly pledge sub that can be canceled?
Yeah,
This is talking about smaller pledges, right?
yeah, yeah. It's one of the things that's being considered. Again, you guys have come up with a lot of really good ideas. We're actually taking note of them as we discuss potential ways to get revenue from Pantheon. But thanks for that suggestion. It has come up as well.
Yeah, we get a lot of good suggestions from the community. It's makes things a little bit easier. We'll take notes and then claim it as our own.
I think Desmond just breached visual NDA.
Oh, yeah, yeah. We use that green. So sorry,
That's
Desiree.
yeah,
We're gonna
that's the we're gonna have to ban you. That's the whole world. I can see
yeah,
everything in that one little picture.
we'll miss you.
N- No spoff.
All right, guys. I know that there's still some questions. Some of the questions I didn't put onto Jamie's list because particularly because we just don't have answers to them. So
Yeah, that and we are out of time.
we are.
But for real quick for the alpha, how are they going to get notified? We're going to put up messages, send out emails, etc.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Actually, I anticipate that Artois, who's in the channel, is probably going to be leading that up there. Yes, and he says we will email you.
Yep. So look for those. If you check the forums and Discord and such, we'll definitely say that we have sent those out. But yeah, check your spam folder because they tend to go
That
in there for
happens a
some
lot.
reason.
The bean I dropped before. Just think about it.
Yeah.
Just think about it. Think about it. Why would we be? Why
Okay.
would we be emphasizing a class, race, matrix changes? Just
Stop,
saying. Just saying.
stop.
2 days.
Cut 'em
Also,
off.
2 days. You guys are going to be playing Pantheon again full time. I mean, that's just let that sink in for a second. Full time Pantheon MMO 2 days away.
Yeah.
It's like it's crazy for even me to say out loud. It's
Yeah.
so exciting.
I'll be back to jumping around and handing out pizza. All right, guys. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ben Dean. Thank you, Chris Perkins. Thank you, Pantheon supporters. We love you all. Can't wait to
Thanks,
see everybody back in. Have a good night, guys.
Onward and upward all. Thanks. Adios.
Ooh.